So I've been fishing a jig for years. It's one of the most popular bass fishing lures and it's one of my favorites, fishing all over the country. It catches fish almost anywhere. I learned a little trick a while back, started playing around with it while I was fishing a jig, and today we're gonna share that secret with you. It's one of my favorite secrets with fishing a jig, one of my favorite ways to rig up a jig. So we're gonna break down everything you need to know from rod and reel equipment, the bait selection, and we're even gonna show you how to fish this thing and why it's such an effective way to fish a jig, or at least to rig up a jig. So stay tuned, let's get right into it. So first, let's talk about our rod and reel setup right here. I'm fishing in Florida today, so I do have braided line on here, but you could do this technique with fluorocarbon as well. So you could put 15-pound test fluorocarbon, 17-pound test fluorocarbon on here. It would work just fine. Today we have 30-pound braid. That's what I went with for fishing down here in Florida. It cuts through the grass better, and it'll allow me to land more fish. So that's what we went with our main line. And then for my jig rod, I literally just use what I would use for a chatterbait, a Texas rig, any of that stuff. So this is a 7:1 gear ratio reel that I have on here. I want to be able to keep up with the bait, reeling it quickly, being able to reel it back in and make another cast very quickly, and if a fish bites it, be able to catch up with that fish and get a good hook set. And then for the rod, this is a Dobyns Fury 734. It's rated as a heavy action, but it's more like a medium heavy. It's 7'3". Perfect rod for fishing a jig, especially the way that we're going to do it today. It's not a very fancy setup. It's most basic setup that I have in my boat, and I use it for almost everything. So the only difference is that I'm going with braid today. You can do this with braid if you choose to, if you're fishing around a lot of grass, but usually I'm doing this with fluorocarbon as well as on this technique. Now, when it comes to the actual jig setup and how to rig this up, what I have here, this is my favorite jig I have ever used in my entire life. This is the 6th Sense hybrid jig. I'm not saying it just because I'm affiliated with them. It comes through everything. I used the 1/2 and 3/4 ounce for football jigs this summer, fishing out on some shell bars. I've used the 1/2 ounce for flipping. This one right here, though, is my true favorite. It's probably the most versatile one. It's the 3/8 ounce jig. So the reason it has the triangular shaped head with an inline line tie. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna fish this like a swim jig. Most typical swim jigs will have is a swim bait trailer. We're gonna skip that and we're gonna go with a cross style trailer. So I have the 6th Sense Bongo on here, new bait, has awesome action. I fish this whatever color you like to use. If you like a black and blue jig, go with that. I have like a bluegill-ish color on here. There's a lot of bluegill in this lake, so that's their main forage. I went with like a green pumpkin-y and a watermelon red combo. That's what I'm fishing today. All I do is just thread that craw on the bait, and what this is going to allow me to do is I can fish it like a swim jig like I talked about. So especially here, we have a lot of expansive grass flats. You might not have that on your lake. You might have wood all down the bank. What you can do is you can flip that wood. So usually what I'll do is I'll rig up one jig, one rod, and I will flip this thing down the bank, and we're gonna go out on the water and show you how to fish this thing, but I'll flip this down the bank, I'll flip all my wood, and then I'll reach an area where there's no more wood. There's a big stretch of nothing. I'll reel this bait in and I'll fish it like a swim jig going down that bank. Rather than just standing there not throwing something or having to pick up a different rod and throw a different bait, you can just fish this a little bit differently and just work it down the bank, and it works exceptionally well as a swim jig because of that head design. It comes through everything and you'll be good to go on no matter what type of cover you're fishing. It basically works for grass, wood, rock, all of it. And that 3/8 size, with this bait, you can keep it up in the water and fish it like a swim jig, and it still has a good slow fall when you're flipping it like a regular jig. So that's my setup there. It's really simple. It's not anything groundbreaking with a jig either. I'm sure other people have done this before. I just wanted to break down my setup. So now we're gonna head out on the water. We're gonna show you how I would fish this thing down the bank, how I like to work it, and hopefully we'll catch a fish along the way. So now that we talked about what makes this jig special and why I like it so much, we're gonna actually break this thing down, fish it around, show you how I like to use it. We have the 3/8 ounce on today. You can see we got a bunch of shallow cover up here that we've been fishing. There's been a lot of like little buck bass up there. I'm sure there's probably some big ones up there with them, but there's been a lot of little males chasing bait up there. But in a regular instance, you would need 2 baits to be able to fish up shallow up there, just burning down the bank. And then we have docks in between all this cover. You would need a second bait to fish those docks. So we're gonna show you how I like to use this so that I can fish both of these areas. And these docks are in like 8 foot of water. And this grass I'm fishing is very shallow. So I'm keeping this bait like a foot below the surface. I'm really fishing it like a swim jig. I'm just cooking it around up shallow up there, covering a lot of water, trying to see if maybe there's a lucky big one up there. And then when I approach a dock, I'll be able to just skip it right underneath that dock and fish it like a regular jig. So I'll let that go all the way down to the bottom. I'm on the bottom now, and I'll just work it like a jig down there, just like I was flipping. And we'll catch one. Oh, we lost him. Don't know how that one came off, but we did get a bite. But it's that easy. I mean, I could have picked up a different jig and thrown it in there. Then I'd have to pick up another bait once I get on the other side and throw that somewhere else. But now that I have this bait here, it comes through everything. I can literally fish it like a regular flipping jig and then work it as a swim jig everywhere else. You could even use it as like a football jig like I've done before. But the 3/8 ounce, perfect for fishing around these shallow docks. It skips really well. It has a slow fall. And it's perfect for fishing as a swim jig too. You can keep that swim jig less than like a foot deep and fish up there very, very shallow. And with the braided line, I can literally fish it through anything. So we'll go ahead and fish down through here and see if we can get one to bite. And as you can tell, that combo of the bongo and this triangular shaped head skips fantastic. Even on this 30-pound braid, I mean, for the most part, it's going under there with ease. So it makes a fantastic skipping jig. It's just an all-around really good jig. If you're just getting started into jig fishing, you don't know where to begin, this is the jig I would recommend, and just get the one and play around with it and see what kind of jigs you'd use most. Try it as a football jig, try it as a flipping jig, try it as all different types of jigs, and see what you really like to fish the most. You might not like football jigs that much, so there's no point in going and getting a bunch of football jigs, but you might like fishing a skipping jig a lot, so get a really, really good skipping jig and dial that in. I just really like this jig to get started and just as a really versatile jig to do a little bit of everything with. So we'll keep working our way down here and see what we can find. There we go. Just like that, we were able to get one swimming that jig around. He darted right out from that Kissimmee grass right there. I watched him come out and eat it. That was the coolest bite ever. That one's a little bit bigger, so he was actually able to hang on to it. There you go right there. Not a big one, but that's literally 3 bites in like 100 yards. I've caught, I think, like 4 fish all day, so it's been miserable. Jig's getting the work done. I absolutely love fishing that thing. It's probably one of my favorite baits ever. I swim it around everywhere. I skip docks with it. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it, and it catches fish. So we're gonna let this one go. If you wanna see another video talking about some jig fishing tips, go ahead and check this one out right here. Hit that subscribe button down below so you don't miss any more of my fishing videos coming up. Thanks for watching. See you, dude.